Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
My guest today on Sports Files is the Memphis Tigers men's basketball beat writer from the Commercial Appeal, Jason Smith. Hoops aplenty today. Later in the show, we'll dive into the Grizzlies and talk about their trade from earlier this week. But first, it's time for the Memphis Tigers to open up the college basketball season. Last week on Sports Files, we sat down with seniors Shaq Goodwin and Ricky Tarrant Jr. to preview the upcoming Tigers round ball season. Today, we'll get the perspective of Jason Smith, who covers the Tigers for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. In fact, nobody is closer to the program than the Tigers beat writer, who is with the team for every game and nearly every practice. Of course, when those practices are open to the media. One of the most enjoyable things of having Jason on the program is his willingness to be open, honest, and opinionated. He won't hold back punches if those punches are with merit. Tonight, the Tigers open up the regular season with a home battle against Southern Mississippi. Two teams looking for redemption this season. Of course, the Tigers are coming off a respectable 18-14 campaign, but it was a rare season in which the Tigers were absent for postseason play. Today, Jason Smith on the Young Tigers, a squad loaded with freshmen and hoping to surprise, and the pressure on seventh-year head coach Josh Pastner. And it's all next on Sports Files. Jason, great to see you again.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Thanks for joining me. Always appreciate your insight going into a season, and of course, the post-mortem after the season. Our post-mortem wasn't good after this past season. Will this season be any better?
It could. Man, how do I answer that one way or the other? It could, or it couldn't, Greg. It could go really bad. But I do think I'm in the minority. I think there's enough talent here that this can end a lot better, certainly than last season did, where we don't get an end of the year presser, and you've got the three of us all piling on there at the end of the year. I think Josh didn't talk to me for 3 weeks after the last time we did the show.
Yeah, it was a rough one for everybody.
Well, it was hard.
It was rough for the fans, too. Yeah. And that's a big thing going into the season. Ticket sales are down. Season ticket sales are down. The interest has waned a bit. How do they win them back?
Well, you win them back the old-fashioned way. You do it the way Justin Fuente and Tom Bowen have done it in football. You win games and you get them back that way. I do want to say, in all fairness to Josh, I don't think this thing's it's fallen as far off the track as a lot of people like to say it has. However, I mean, you win 148 games in 6 years. That's 25. Where else would you be saying a coach has won 25 games a year and he's in trouble? He's on the hot seat. Josh Pastner is, though, and the reason he is because he's following a guy who. The expectations here got crazy after what John Calipari did.
So is it unfair expectations for Josh?
It was always there were always going to be unfair expectations for Josh. And then he didn't do it himself any favors winning the way he did, keeping it going, and that's a credit to himself. But now he kept the bar so high that once they dropped off a little bit last year, people think the wheels are falling off. I don't think they're falling completely off. I think he can pull them back on. To answer your original question, but it's going to take winning, and he's got to do it this year.
Well, I understand what you're saying. 18-14 for most programs is good.
That's what I'm saying.
But when Memphis doesn't go to a postseason tournament,
it's a problem.
Is a rarity, and people are not happy about that. So you go to the offseason, you have players transferring. Austin Nichols, the biggest name. They lose Nick King. He goes to Alabama. Nichols, of course, to Virginia. 10 new players, 8 of them freshmen. Mm-hmm. How do they find the chemistry, especially with some of the opponents they have early in the season, to get things clicking from the get-go? Because we remember last year they struggled from right out of the gate.
And they've really done that now, Greg, like the last 4 years. You remember last year's Wichita State, the year before that was Oklahoma State It's been that way, it seems like, for the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know that it's going to be any different this year when you bring in Oklahoma, the number 18 in the country, for your second game. And as you said, you're working in so many new guys. How How do you get the chemistry together so early? I don't know if you can with so many new guys. I think the way that you kind of work around that is you don't play. You're not. Josh Pastner isn't going to play 8 freshmen this year. You know what he's probably going to do is play 2, 3. Probably 4 of them, but then the rest of them, all of them can't play. So that's the issue, is you work 2, 3 guys in rather than all the 8 freshmen in, and work them in with your veterans, which they have with Shaq Goodwin. Ricky Tarrant, who we saw in the exhibition game, was good for them at the point. They've got some veteran leadership. They've got to work in a few of those freshmen, not all of them. That'd be a problem if Josh tries to play all of them.
Yeah, you mentioned Oklahoma. That'll be Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Of course, tonight the opener against Southern Miss. They have their own issues, Southern Miss, which we won't get into detail about that, but I think people know as there's self-imposed sanctions once again this year, they won't be going to the postseason, but that's because of sanctions.
Right.
Memphis wants to get back to the postseason, and if they don't, it's because of struggles in their play. Austin Nichols, before we look to what they have, let's talk about what they don't have. How big of a loss, how much of a loss is losing a guy like Nichols, who's an all-conference performer?
It's huge to say that, oh, they'll be fine without Austin Nichols and they're plugging in a McDonald's All-American and Dedrick Lawson and saying everything will be fine would be naive. Austin Nichols, if he was still on this team with what they've got right now, they'd be a top 25 team. Instead, they're ranked about 70th. According to KenPom, going into the season. So that's how much of a difference he makes, especially what he did on defense last year. We all know how great a player Austin was skill-wise, but the jump he made defensively to go to 90-something blocks again, for the season last year, to be one of the nation's best shot blockers, that's something they're not going to be able to replace this year. Dedrick Lawson, I believe, can be better than Austin was his freshman season.
Wow.
And that, you're talking about 9-4, 9-5. Those aren't numbers that Dedrick Lawson can't reach. He can do that. He didn't play very well, particularly well in the Lamont Owen game, and he still almost had a double-double. I mean, that's how smooth, that's how good this guy is. So, yes, Austin is a huge loss. They can move on, but the key, and Josh has said this, is health. If they lose Dedrick Lawson, if they lose Shaq Goodwin or Ricky Tarrant, they're in deep trouble just like they were last year when Austin got hurt.
With the loss of Nichols and the addition of a guy like Dedrick Lawson, it has forced Josh to change his style of play. Let's talk about that so people know what to expect when they go out and see the Tigers this season.
Well, it's a 4-round one. It's something we haven't seen before, and Josh has never coached. He's made this clear that he's never coached a 4-round one where you've essentially got one post player and 4 guards, 4 wing guys around him. And keep in mind, we're talking about Dedrick Lawson, KJ Lawson, those guys playing on the perimeter around a Shaq Goodwin or around a Nick Marshall, the freshman center. It's going to be different. The key is going to be spacing. The key is going to be, can those playmakers find lanes to dribble inside, make plays, whether it's kick, whether it's Ricky Tarrant going inside. They didn't have they haven't had, and they didn't have last year, playmakers who could break down guys off the dribble. This offense is going to rely on that. So that's how important guys like Ricky Tarrant, Jeremiah Martin, they'll be key to this offense because you've got to have a guy that can break down his defender off the dribble if you're going to run this. And you've got to have shooters, Greg. That's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to get to that in a second, but let me go back to something you said. This is a system, this is a style that he's never run before. Mm-hmm. So, Jason, did you ask Josh, did you happen to ask Josh if he leaned on anybody who has run this system before, or is this something he just looked at tape, figured it out for himself?
I think it's something he's just looked at tape. He certainly hasn't told us anything that he's gone and talked to any specific person or anything. I think he's looked at his personnel, and I think this is actually a good thing. Josh is, and a lot of times, I don't think it's fit to what his personnel's been. This year, this is what you've got personnel-wise. Probably a good idea to adjust. They don't have a second post player that they can just throw the ball into. The question is going to be, and we've pointed this out before, Greg, is when Josh has tried things that he hadn't done before, whether maybe it's a press or something like that, in a lot of cases he'll do it, won't have that early success that he's looking for, and he backs away.
Right.
Just like we talked about with the press a couple of years ago, and he pulls off.
He doesn't stick with it.
Will he stick with the 4-round one, or if it's ugly early on, will he go back to a 3-round 2 and try to stick a KJ inside or a Dedrick inside to play with Shaq and go back to the old way of playing?
It seems like on paper, with the lack of depth with their bigs, especially if Shaq were to get into foul trouble early on, you have a Nick Marshall who has been reclassified. He should be a senior in high school, just like Dedrick Lawson. But they're so thin. Is that going to be the biggest area of concern when they play teams that have formidable front lines?
I think it is, and you know why it is, Greg? It's because of a question I've heard you ask in this preseason about the way refs are going to call fouls this year. It's going to be tighter. You know, they tried this 2 years ago. They said they're going to stick with it all season long, and they didn't. You know, some of those coaches, some of those old head coaches would get them back. No, you're not going to call it that way.
Right.
And they got tired of those long games. This year they said they're sticking to it. So to go back to your question, yes, if they call it the way it's supposed to be called, if they called screens the way they're supposed to be called, and big guys don't get set, this team could find itself in real foul trouble, and I think it's the bigs that will be affected most because those are the guys setting the screens. You know, they talked about trying to limit the hand checking on the perimeter. That won't be such a problem for the Shaqs and Nick Marshalls, but it'll be the screen setting, the reaching, especially for Shaq.
Right.
And yeah, exactly. I think it could be an issue for this team with the way they're supposed to call fouls this season. We'll see if they'll stick with it again this year.
You talked about the fact that they need to make shots. In this style, you have to do that. We know that Woodson made shots last year early, and then he hit a brick wall.
No doubt.
Who are the guys that will be called upon this year to make those shots?
This is I think one of the other key concerns for this team. You know, you talked about Avery Woodson. You know, 37.7%, almost 38% is nothing to sneeze at what he shot last year. He was on fire to start the year. He's everything they want him to be.
Right.
But you're right, he hit a wall. He's got to be able to do that all season long, be that spot up guy. Then you said, well, where are the other guys? You know, what they've added with Tarrant. Tarrant, you know, has been a decent long-range shooter for his entire career. Looked good against Lemoyne Owen. I think 4 of 9 from 3, but has just been decent, right around 30%. So you look at some of the freshmen. You know, Craig Randall is a guy who we've watched now in practice, a freshman out of Phoenix who's actually a native of Ohio, played for Mike Bibby out in Phoenix his senior year of high school.
Right.
He can shoot the ball. Nice-looking, sweet lefty jump shot. And that is his ticket. He's one of those freshmen that can earn his way in if he can shoot it. And I think the reason he can is because they don't have very many shooters among that veteran group of guys. Not very many that you know you can rely on.
Josh says he's going to have a tight rotation, a short rotation, but that rotation could change game to game depending upon the opposition, depending on injuries and such. Do you think he'll stick with that? And who do you think is on the outside looking in as far as that rotation is concerned?
You know, that's one of the things we talked about. Will Josh stick with something? You know, he says a lot of things going into the year he'll change. And I think he's told us enough about this that if we see more than 7 to 8, we'll know, you know, whether it's foul issues, whether it's trying to find the right mix. Early on, you know, you could see as many as 9 to 10 guys as he tries to find the right mix. Who's on the outside? I think there's a couple of those that are clear. Randall Brody is a guy who didn't play against Lemoyne. I think will redshirt this year. The question is, will he stay and take that red shirt, or will, as we've seen in the case of Josh, guys don't want to stay and be redshirted, they leave. You know, as in the case of a Dominic McGee. Randall Brody be one of those guys. Raekwon Mitchell, a guy they added late after Keidron Johnson got hurt with his shoulder. I don't know that he's ready right now. But the other guys, the Jeremiah Martins, the Craig Randalls, Nick Marshall, I think will be in the rotation. Obviously, the Lawsons. Those guys are the ones that have a chance to be in. But I think Brody and Raekwon Mitchell, we can count them out in terms of guys who will not be in the rotation this year.
Who's the most important player for this team to have success?
You asked me that at the end of the year last year, and I'm glad you're asking me again. I still think it's Ricky Tarrant. Just because, yes, Shaq's huge. They're so thin inside. They've got to have it on a nightly basis from him. But Ricky is the initiator, the catalyst of this new offense they're trying to run. They need him to be great on a nightly basis. And what you might see, because his knee isn't 100%, is Ricky doing the old DJ Steffens where he doesn't practice while games aren't going on. He doesn't practice at all, but he brings it during games, and they let him, like DJ used to. DJ had the best deal in college basketball. He didn't have to practice because he brought it in games. Remember how banged up he was? Ricky could be in that boat too.
Looks like Keidron Johnson will come off the bench. He's now married. He now has a kid. He's got the music. There's a million things going on in his life. Will he be a positive influence?
That's something that I'm really interested to see this. You know, the thing about Keidron Johnson is all of his teammates seem to like him. They enjoy his presence. You talk to Shaq Goodwin. He loves that he's there. He wants him to contribute this year. But he hasn't been able. You know, lately he's only been able to get through a few full practices without the shoulder hurting him. Can he stay around and be a positive influence with so much else going on, with the family now, with the music career going on? I don't know. But that's something Josh has got to watch. If it becomes an issue where he's holding, maybe some of the younger guys feel like he's holding me back. Maybe Kedron's not practicing, but he's getting to play in games. That could be an issue. So you've got to watch it. You've got to watch what is the risk better than the reward there. So I'm not sure how. I don't know that they need Kedron Johnson after what we saw from Ricky, quite frankly, against Lamar.
It's probably unfair to ask you, but I always will, to pull out the crystal ball. What are your expectations?
Well, I needed water for this. A lot of people have asked me this, and a lot of people, when I say it, they look like I'm insane.
You think they make the tournament?
I do. I think this team's going to finish somewhere between 20-11, 22-9 in the regular season. If it's on that 22-9 side, if they can pull off a couple of those non-conference games, if they can win, where I think a couple of people think they have no chance, maybe an Ohio State down in Miami, this would be the year, I think, if you're going to knock off an Ohio State on neutral territory, this would be the year for Memphis. If they can pick up a couple of those, and then beat maybe the SMUs, Connecticut, Cincinnati's, just don't go 0 for 6 there, win a few of those games, they've got a shot. I think the schedule's good enough if they can win. Now, there are enough bad opponents on that schedule, Greg. The one thing they can't do is lose to these bad teams. There's 10, 12 bad teams on that schedule. No room for error there. There's not going to be much room for error with anything in terms of trying to make the tournament with this team.
Little over a minute left. If it goes south again, if there's no tournament, we know Josh still has a lot of money left on his contract. He's a terrific guy.
Right. And
he's won a lot of games. But is he in trouble?
Oh, there's no doubt he's in trouble. And the reason he's in trouble is it's not what he did last year. It's that season ticket sales. It's if those continue to drop. It's that when you see local guys not committing to Memphis, as in a Jalen Fisher who picks UNLV over Memphis, you remember Larry Finch.
Right.
Who lost the local recruiting base and who lost the fans. They stopped coming to games, and they had to, Larry eventually had to go. As much as he was beloved in this city, he had to be fired. If the tickets continue to drop, and they would, obviously, with another bad season, yes, he's in trouble. It doesn't matter how much he's owed, because in that case, you're weighing how much you're going to lose in season ticket sales if you keep him, as opposed to how much you pay him out to buy him out and get him out of here.
Quick answer: how many teams from the American make the tournament, knowing that SMU's on probation?
I'm going to say 3 because I think Memphis is in. I'll say Cincy and UConn make it 2, and since I said that Memphis will be there, I'll stick with 3.
Got to make sure, folks, to read this guy in the commercial appeal.
Thanks,
nobody covers the Tigers like Jason Smith. In and out, inside information, all the great gossip and scoops, and he has it. Jason Smith, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
We'll take a quick break. Overtime is on the way. The 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is winding down. In fact, after tomorrow's race in Phoenix, the season will come to an end next Sunday with the finale at Homestead. And it's at Homestead where the Sprint Cup champion will be determined. Only 4 drivers will race for the crown, and despite a productive season that included qualifying for the chase, Dale Earnhardt Jr. won't be one of them. Jr. is a 2-time Daytona 500 winner, the son of Hall of Famer Dale Sr., and the winner of the Most Popular Driver Award 12 straight years. And that is why a recent public appearance by Dale Jr. at the Bass Pro Shop Pyramid drew a huge crowd. Earnhardt is worth an estimated $300 million, but money and success has never gone to his head. And that is why he is as popular with the fans as ever.
What an amazing place. I mean, I'm just blown away. I've only been here 5 minutes, haven't really got a chance to take a look at it, but it's incredible. And I think that people are just excited really to be here as they are with who's here. We got the Do Perfect guys here, my sister and brother Kerry. So I think this has been a pretty big week. A lot of people coming in and out of the store all week and driving a lot of excitement. So we're glad to be here, glad to be a part of it.
I know you're appreciative, certainly, of this great fan base that you have, but how taxing is it on you flying around to different places, making the personal appearances before going out there on the track and driving?
Not taxing at all. I mean, just like working a 9 to 5. We we don't have anything really going on today. We had a photo shoot this morning and then didn't have anything else going on the last half of the afternoon. So to come out here really is not a problem at all. And it's fun to sort of, get a one-on-one experience with the fans and talk to them to continue to go into the next round of the chase. There's nothing more I'd probably want to do or need to be doing right now than meeting with the fans, because they're going to fire us up and give me the confidence and get me excited about what we got to do this weekend, because it's going to take everything we got.
Dale, what is a successful season for you? How would you define it?
We like to go out there and win races and be competitive and consistent. Everybody puts the championship as the ultimate goal, but I think in the end, championship or not, that you were consistent each weekend, that you ran well, that you improved, learned, and any time the seasons that start out great and maybe it don't end so well, or the seasons where maybe you struggle throughout the summer and you don't end on a high note, those are the disappointments. Those are the ones that you aren't happy about. But if you can go out there and like we've done in the last 3 or 4 years, be competitive every week, be a contender at a lot of the tracks, and win some races, just get to victory lane and celebrate, you can be pretty happy about that.
Do you like this chase format?
I think it's more, I think I could line it up a lot of different ways. I don't really dislike it. I'm not in love with it. It's just, I like the original system we had for 50 years was good. We've had the chase in many different formats, and it's been okay. What we have now, I think, is most exciting for the fans. As a spectator, I believe that this is definitely the one that this system here sort of keeps people tuned in with the elimination factor and the rounds. And if we stay with this and maintain this format for a while, to where people can start to understand it and get accustomed to it, then it becomes the norm, and you forget about the past. We don't when we're changing things one year after the next. It's hard to really, even a hardcore fan, to keep up with what's new and how what's going on. So I think what we have is very exciting, and some stability for a few years with this will be good. And I'm sure we can always come up with ways to make it more exciting, but what we have now, I think, really is as intense as we've ever seen it. Last year was incredible. This year is already off to a wild start, and guys are aggressive, and it's turning into great storylines and driving ratings, and I think people are enjoying it.
One last thing for me. Gordon retiring, next year Tony retiring. Just a couple of words on those great drivers.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to be happy for those guys to accomplish what they've accomplished in their careers, and they certainly wish they were much younger to be able to continue to compete, but have things in their lives that they want to accomplish beyond driving. And I think that they're making the choices on their own terms, which is something every driver wants. Anytime you're in a position of employment, you want to end that situation on your terms, not someone else's, or you don't want to have health make that decision for you or anything like that. So they're able to make these decisions themselves. They're happy with what they've done, ready to close it out and ready to go do something else. And I know that Jeff's going to be great in the booth. He's going to be a huge asset to the sport beyond his driving career as a broadcaster. And Tony Stewart has a lot of things that he's involved in that he really enjoys and loves, and can do more of those things as far as the sprint car racing and the ownership of the dirt tracks and so forth. So he's got a lot of passions that go beyond the driver's seat.
Thank you, Dale.
Several things we need to touch on before we say goodnight. First, the Memphis Tigers football squad is in Houston tonight to face the Cougars. The Tigers fell from the ranks of the unbeaten last Saturday when they lost to Navy 45-20. The loss snapped the Tigers' 15-game winning streak. The Tigers dropped 8 spots in the playoff selection committee's top 25, falling to 21st. Now, Memphis still has a chance to win the American title, but they will need to win the remaining 3 games and then root for Navy to defeat Houston. The Grizzlies returned home Wednesday after a rough 5-game road trip, and things didn't go much smoother. The Grizzlies fell to the defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors for the 2nd time this young season. Several issues have plagued the team this season, with one being ineffective shooting and the other, which is very surprising to many, defensive deficiencies, especially in transition. The Grizz, who also played host to Portland last night, will be at Minnesota tomorrow, then host the Thunder on Monday and the Rockets on Friday before facing the Spurs next Saturday. In other words, things don't get much easier. The team was also involved in a 4-player swap, sending veteran point guard Beno Udrih and seldom-used Memphis native Jarnell Stokes to Miami for one-time Heat starting point guard Mario Chalmers and forward James Ennis. Yes, the same Mario Chalmers who back in 2008 ripped the hearts out of Memphis Tigers fans with the game-tying 3-pointer in the NCAA championship game, which sent the contest to overtime, eventually won by the Kansas Jayhawks. Hey, here's some insider information for you Tiger football fans. If you are interested in a football signed by Coach Justin Fuente, check out the WKNO online holiday auction going on now through November 19th. There are 2 footballs signed by Coach Fuente up for a bid. Just go to www.wkno.org and click on the holiday auction. The coach was kind enough to make these available to help support WKNO, and you can too by placing your bid today. And that'll do it for now. Have yourselves a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.